Hey, what's going on? So, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide just pushed out patch 1.11.2. What stands out right away is that expeditions are getting a little more readable and a little less punishing in the moment-to-moment flow. The Auspex marker now has sound effects, which means when a teammate marks something important during an expedition, it should be easier to notice without constantly staring at the screen. On top of that, some of the jumps needed at certain sites of interest while carrying a battery have been made easier, which sounds like one of those changes that will quietly save teams a lot of frustration. And if you have ever been in a sand vortex and watched ranged enemies keep landing shots that felt way too accurate, there is now a change there too, because enemies will have a harder time hitting players disabled by that vortex. A big chunk of the patch is that fixing talent problems, and honestly, that is where a lot of the practical value lives for regular players. The veteran's field improvisation talent had an issue where it could hand out blitz charges when ammo was picked up in a Deadsider sanctuary, and that has been fixed. Psyker players also get a couple of important corrections, including Malefic Momentum only extending duration for warp damage the way it should, and Psychonetics Aura now properly localizing in languages other than English. Hive Scum's Channel Devastation also had a calculation problem with total critical hit chance in some situations, and that is now addressed as well. Ogryn players are not left out either. Steady Grip was not replenishing toughness while shooting, which is a pretty major issue for a talent that is supposed to support that style of play, and that has been corrected. The Big Friendly Rock also was not always killing Corruptor Eyes in one hit anymore, so that interaction has been fixed too. There's also a weapons note in the patch. The plasma gun's primary fire-based cleave was lower than intended, and the developers say the effective cleave should now sit a little above 18. That sort of detail matters because it changes how the weapon feels in actual combat, especially when you're trying to control space instead of just dumping damage into one target. There are also some fixes that are more about overall mission stability and less about one class or one weapon. A rare crash on the Morningstar tied to interacting with a Cyber Mastiff has been fixed, and there was another crash involving dropped tech remnants notifications when the player's name was no longer accessible. The game also now throws an error pop-up if engine components fail to load, which should make certain problems much easier to diagnose, instead of leaving people guessing what went wrong. That may not sound exciting, but when you're trying to keep a live game smooth, this kind of repair work matters a lot. A few of the fixes are especially nice because they clean up weird edge case behavior that could absolutely ruin a run. Dead players are no longer counted toward the half-team requirement for exit and extraction zones, which means if the rest of the squad is gone, the survivors can still handle those events on their own, instead of being trapped by a bad count. The Data Harvester penances also now count data reliquaries retrieved by teammates as intended, so progression should be more consistent there. There was also an issue where players could get killed if they were outside the airlock when it closed while bots were still inside, and that has been fixed as well. Those are the kinds of problems that make players feel like the game is arguing with them, so it is good to see them cleaned up. Expedition-specific navigation and readability got a lot of attention too. The patch fixes a mismatch between grid node names and their Greek letter symbols, wrong node icons on the post-mission screen, and even a wrong text string on the expedition's mission board. The same mission name is also now shown across the tactical overlay, the invite pop-up, and the ready up screen, which is exactly the kind of consistency that reduces confusion without drawing attention to itself. There were also fixes for unreachable items, several navigation issues, and an issue where some items in expeditions could not be reached properly. That all points to the same theme, making the mode feel less like it is fighting the player's flow. The visual and audio cleanup is surprisingly broad too. The tech priest by the expedition's terminal had a face clipping issue through his mask, which has now been fixed. Bomb drop sound was adjusted, explosion sound effects and limits were tuned, and the Valkyrie barrel run got polished up with visual fixes as well. The Valkyrie itself also received multiple movement-related corrections, including the fire support variant sometimes failing to move and the departing insertion or mission start Valkyrie not moving smoothly. Even the engines were still audible after it left in one case, and that has been fixed. None of this is headline grabbing by itself, but altogether it makes the game feel more finished. There's also a very practical fix for the Auspex flow, because players could lose access to the Auspex after interacting with a decoder, and that issue has been resolved. Timer warning pop-ups were sometimes failing to appear too, and the timer itself has been made more accurate so it does not jump around in time. That might sound like a tiny detail until you are trying to react to a warning in the middle of chaos. The update also fixes a low-resolution world load issue when entering a Deadsider sanctuary after joining a session in progress, and it repairs a rare crash tied to smoke grenades being thrown at a sand vortex.